beautiful people, and welcome to Just Bloom with Kiki Orr.
This is episode number 12. About 15 days ago, I started this 21 days of abundance challenge. I'm so grateful to my sister for sharing it with me. It's with Deepak Chopra from the Chopra Center. And the irony is that it started right as I was told that I'd be working remotely. I do my best to start with it in the morning. It's grounding. It has a journaling aspect to it. In the event that I don't start it during the day, I most certainly make sure that I do it before I go to bed. And in this moment, I'm just reminded to breathe. Take a deep breath in. Release. Another deep breath in. Release. One more. Deep breath in. Just let it all out. Yes, we need that. We need to be intentional about our breathing. It's been a long 3 weeks, at least for me, because that's when I started working remotely. For some others, it's been 2 weeks. The 21-day abundance challenge has been my saving grace during this COVID pandemic. The messages that we keep receiving are ones that the pandemic is on the rise and it's going to get worse before it gets better. The information is important. But I also recognize that I get to limit my intake and my frequency of the news. And so I've been doing that, only tuning in once a week, if that. And I trust that I will get information that is truly important from loved ones. I pray that you're doing well. And I also hope that you're doing your part to slow the spread of this virus. I'm most grateful to our essential workers, and my condolences to anyone who has lost a loved one. For this episode, I'm going to give us a big picture view, a shift in our perspective, if you will. Again, as I said, for some of us, it's been 3 weeks, for others, 2 weeks of the social distancing, and it's been challenging. What makes it easy for me is that I'm clear that I want to live and I want to support others in doing the same. I miss my children. I miss seeing them, but I also know that it's a small sacrifice for a larger goal. When this first occurred, my good sis Nicole said that many of us were in survival mode. And she said that to really support me with getting through the beat up for how I experienced the end of my first week. I was emotionally depleted came Friday. So much news and so much fear of the unknown. And so I really appreciate hearing her words. It gave me permission to be okay with what I had experienced. Week 1, we really got to see scarcity play out live and in color with the hoarding of supplies and toilet tissue and price gouging. But we also got to experience many moments of great humanity. Personally, up until that point, I had done very little shop. I was in the mindset that there would be plenty, that we live in an abundant world. There is enough. And then I get to the store on that Friday and the shelves were damn near wiped clean. I think the reality of everything just hit me. And I was navigating my own working remotely situation. My child was learning remotely. We were adjusting. Early in that week, it wasn't clear as to whether or not I was going to be redeployed to another task, which meant that there was the possibility that I'd be coming in, going out, and exposing myself as well as my child. That was really anxiety inducing. And I cried. So when Nicole said we were in survival mode, we were in survival mode and we were getting through. And we didn't plan very well because after all, how do you plan for the unknown? What we thought was going to be maybe a few weeks, we now know is going to be much longer. So as part of the way that I got to channel kind of my anxiety and my upset and the uncertainty was to create a partnership with Nicole. She and I did a live. We focused on working remotely. We offered our tips through our experience. We didn't know then that the whole state or nation was going to be ordered to stay at home at that time. The idea for us was to create normalcy because after all, we just had a few weeks of this. I stand by those tips, by the way. But again, they were created with this idea that we want to create normalcy. But it was also created from this idea that I wanted to be able to do something. I asked myself, what can I do? How can I be of service? I couldn't turn my brain off and I couldn't stop my heart from practically what felt like it was bleeding, thinking about all of those on the front line. Again, at this point, I was in my 6th day of meditation. I don't know if I said that already, but I was the 6th day in of the 21 day of abundance. And thank goodness, because on that 6th day, the message became really clear to me. And it said, peace, be still, or better yet, please be still. I recognized that in order for me to be of maximum service to anyone, that I first needed to take care of myself. And that looked like continuing with my meditation, being present in the moment, being still so that I could truly listen and hear the message that comes through with clarity and discern what was God's will versus what was mine. Discerning what actions were fear-based. I realized that a lot of my thoughts, the racing thoughts, were based upon guilt. I was guilt and partially shame. I was home with my child. My job is still intact, at least for now. I'm getting news that some of my colleagues may be redeployed and thinking about the worry and stress that would have on them and their family and their health. And then I was reminded of the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I sat with that. I felt that. And so on Saturday, I decided I'm going to tune in to D Nice, right? I'm going to have some fun. I called my sisters. We were at this club quarantine, but you couldn't tell us that we weren't really in the place. We created this whole fantasy in our brains. We were rubbing elbows with some of the greats. And yes, Patti LaBelle is my friend. I posted about her being at the club and she reposted it. I'm so happy. We had a blast. I cleaned my house. I created a work structure for myself and Nyla. Things were starting to look and be on the mend for us. And for that, I was grateful. I remind myself every day of what I am grateful for. That is a key and core component to me navigating through this COVID pandemic. Brene Brown talked about empathy versus shame. So remember, I talked about the fact that I was feeling this level of shame and guilt. In short, empathy focuses out where shame is egocentric. And I got to explore my shame after I partied and recognize what I ultimately want to experience and not deprive myself of is empathy. That there's enough empathy to go around. I get to empathize with the essential workers, our neighbors and our friends without having that take away from what I'm experiencing myself. In fact, she said, the more you empathize, the more you have to give away. So I've been checking in with friends throughout. And if I haven't gotten to you yet, just know that your time is coming. I have friends that own businesses and their business has been affected. In fact, I talked to one of my friends, texted with one of my friends, and I asked her how she was doing. And she said that she was depressed and that she was worried. I specifically asked what she was worried about, and she said finances. And the reason I asked the question was because I think it's important that we get to name the fear. It's important to acknowledge verbally what is causing the angst, because we get to support around those things as opposed to giving a one size fit all. It's like going to the doctor and telling the doctor that you're in pain and expecting for the doctor to be able to treat it. I'm not saying that I'm a doctor, I'm not diagnosing, and I'm not treating, but I am able to provide support and resources, and I want to be able to give the proper resources. And so I think it's important to name what the challenge is. Allows me to channel kind of the support. So I was able to give her some information that I got from 311, some information that the state was sharing from another friend of mine. I generally go into fix-it mode, but I was able to be still and calm in that moment. I did cry because after all, she's my friend and I want her to be okay. But I also know that I get to trust. I get to hold on to trust and I get to hold on to my faith. There's one thing that she said that stuck out to me about worry. She said, I'm going through this, but other people are too. And so it was my opportunity to see kind of the empathy versus guilt or shame, if you will, play out real time. And so I want to say, yes, she's going through that. You're going through this. And so are so many other people. But that doesn't mean that you don't get to have your experience around it, that you don't get to acknowledge your struggle, your own emotional well-being, and that you get to put it to the side because other people could possibly be worse off than you. Because what will happen is that your feelings will be stuffed, it will fester, and it will come to head. So we get to practice empathy for the world. But in the world, that includes you. It's important to share where we are emotionally, it's also important for us to be able to see the other side. I was on a call on Wednesday, last week Wednesday, with Sylvia High. Yes, because I fill up my spiritual bucket. I take it very seriously. Dr. Nandi said, you may have all heard this if you're from New York City, the MTA says, see something, say something. Well, she says, say something, see something. Say something, see something. In other words, our words have power. What we say can transform into something. So just as much as we are saying that we have this angst, we can talk about what other things we want to manifest, because that is important and our words have power. You know, with us being home, we often wonder, what do I get to do next? I'm probably TikTok out, Netflix out, or whatever it is that you were doing kind of for the short term. I know that I am a little TikTok out, but I am happy to say that I've learned a new TikTok dance. It's the Savage, and I did very, very well. It took me some time to get it, but I got it. So go check me out on Instagram. And I think many of us were going to those things because, again, short term, right? It's 2 weeks, it's 3 weeks, it's good. I can do a little TikTok now and some Netflix, catch up, all of that stuff. And now what looked like 3 weeks could possibly be a total of 2 months. Now for longer term, perhaps you can begin to focus on those passion projects. Anything that you had set aside, you can get to it now or not. So it's like, all right, Key, what about maintaining that normalcy that you was talking about a week ago? I say now it's time to really pivot and look at the bigger picture of the affects and effects of this pandemic. It will be over. It will be over. But the question is, what will life look like on the other side of this? This is not going to be a sprint. It definitely is a marathon, and life as we know it will change. And I think the sooner we acknowledge and recognize that, the better off we'll be. Admittedly, the first week I said that when this is over, I'm going on a hugging spree. I don't think I'm going to be doing much of that. Or many people said that they're going out to brunch, and we all have these plans. But the fact is that businesses are affected or will be affected. So even if your business isn't closed, even when we go back to work, the way in which we navigate and move throughout this world is going to be different. How we interact with one another will be different, at least for the near future. This is having an effect on our emotional, physical, and financial well-being. So if we think we're just going to jump back in and like this be a distant memory, not so much. But it also doesn't mean that we get to be in despair about it. It just means that we get to acknowledge and put things into perspective. Perspective is important. We also get to hold on to our hopes, our dreams, our passion, our creativity, and our joy. And then there's our children, our dear little loved ones. They're navigating this the best way that they can. I have a 14-year-old at home. I posted on Instagram recently, kind of jokingly, but you know, many a truth is spoken in jest, that I'm serving as a teaching assistant as well as the dean of students, because I am. Some days I'm like, hey, get off that phone. Don't you have a next class? What are you doing? Like the schedule that we created week 1, we haven't been adhering to, which is why she's sleeping during her lunch, because her schedule is all off. And so we need to create the structure again, or at least adhere to the structure that we created. I also recognize and acknowledge the emotional toll that this is having on her and on children worldwide. This is different. Our level of responsibility, albeit different than theirs, but they have responsibilities too. They have feelings. They have friends that they're missing. My daughter, who's a kindergarten teacher, shared with me some time ago that they do this check-in around their well-being with the children, gauging their emotional tank, right? Is it half? Is it full? Is it empty? Because fuel supports us. Fuel determines how far we can go, and we need it. And so I want to know where my daughter's emotional tank is. And so I'm definitely going to implement that with her, because as you know, teens don't always necessarily verbalize where they are emotionally, other than giving us these facial expressions or saying, because you're being annoying, and so for me, it's really important to gauge the spectrum of her emotions. I must have asked her about 10 times yesterday a question, of which 9 times I got the answer no. Just no. So not a blah, 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 no. Not a blah, blah, no. I didn't push her on it. I didn't ask her to elaborate because I believe that no is a full sentence. And that's a topic for another time too, because if we really believe that no has power, then the way in which we interact with our children saying no is important. Also, if you don't ask an open-ended question, you leave yourself susceptible to a yes or no answer. What this emotional tank will give to me is some insight as to where she is emotional. What's great about this exercise of checking in on our emotional fuel tank is that it's not one-sided. I get to do it as well. So if I'm operating at 20%, then she gets to think about, or perhaps there's a conversation about what she gets to do to support in that moment. It doesn't mean taking my weight or my problem. It just means that if mommy is operating at 20% and I know that generally, leaving the dishes in the sink or not closing the jar on the gel, that drives me bananas when she doesn't close things. However, it may drive me less crazy if I am at an emotional tank of 80%, but more so if I'm at 20. And so that awareness can have her pivot and have her shift and vice versa. It's also important that we display and share and talk about our feelings. I do not run in a room or hide anything that I'm feeling in terms of if I'm sad or angry or upset. I express that outwardly because I think it's healthy. It's healthy for our children to learn how to navigate those emotions, how to create solutions, or how sometimes to just sit and be in our pain or upset. And so we get to be an example of that specifically during these times. I think we get to say, I am a bit worried because this is uncertain, or I am sad because people are dying or because people are losing their jobs. I think they get to know that. Or I'm sad because I miss my daughters and I want to be able to see them and hug them. You get the point. This is new for them. It's new for all of us. It's our new normal. I want us to give ourselves grace. There are parents that are going through this that have younger children than I have. And I've seen you post and some of the stresses that you're experiencing from having to homeschool and work simultaneously. And you're saying that it doesn't work. And it's okay to say that it doesn't work. It's okay to say that you need help. It's okay to reach out and ask other people, how are they making it work? My sister works from home. She's always worked from home. And my nephew now, like many of our children, have to be homeschooled. But she does his work in the evening time. Again, we have to pivot, right? Because this is our new normal. She cannot reasonably do her job and teach him at the same time. It just doesn't work. So she has to create a new normal for them, if you will. So give yourself the permission. Give yourself grace. Know that you're not a bad parent. You didn't do anything wrong. This is not your fault. It's not their fault. It's no one's fault. No one is here to blame. So again, give yourself grace. We're all navigating through this. I think it's important that we, again, limit our intake of television, social media. We get back to the basic, because this actually works for me when I am kind of at my wit's end and I'm not clear what direction to go next. What works for me is really just doing these few things. It's praying, meditating, or listening to some empowered speakers, empowered podcasts, whatever it is that fills your spiritual bucket, do that. Eat well. Reduce your sugar intakes, because sugar gets us hyper, then we crash. Reduce your carbs. And for me, at least, food is closely aligned to my emotional state because I'm gluten sensitive. So I'm very cognizant of that. And while I want to, in this moment, eat the cake, I'll eat it as long as it's gluten free. So it's very important that I eat a well-balanced meal, drink plenty of water, and move your bodies. Our bodies hold so much emotionally. Sometimes we feel pain in our neck or our side or on our back, and it's because that's where the emotions are being stored. Move that body, stretch, exercise. My cousin Melissa on Instagram is Miss_transform her, is offering free fit camps. She does it for her, but she invites the company. She has lost 75 pounds. She's adjusted her schedule to support folks who would like to join her. She's a dental hygienist and she's not working right now. And she's also not getting paid, but she's still offering this because she wants to maintain her health, her sanity. I know she probably is not agreeing with me saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Contributions are welcome, but no person will be turned away. I think ultimately, as a collective, as a universe, we were tired. I've heard friends say that they were tired, that they needed a break. I also think that we were in this rat race, constantly going, and not really taking much time to pause. I believe that what has occurred with the COVID-19 has given us an opportunity to rest, to reset, to refocus, to realign. We get to use this opportunity as one where we pivot. Many of us has never experienced a war or anything of this magnitude, a pandemic. But if you think about your own personal life, you've experienced loss before, be it death, or loss of a job, some level of tragedy. And if you're too young to have experienced that, those who have, just think about in the moment where you wondered, how am I going to get through? And here you stand. Did it take time? Yes. Was it easy? Probably not. Did you have to call on the will of God and support of family and friends? Yes. Did you get through it? You did. We will get through this because love prevails always and in all ways. Continue taking care of yourself. And during this time, use it to harvest, plant seeds, watch it grow. And I'm going to leave you with this. A good friend of mine sent me a poem the other day. His name is Cordell Ferguson, aka Cordy. I told him I was going to share it because I think it's quite poignant for this moment. And he titled it, The Story of Life. The Story of Life. This is your story. You're experiencing your truth. This is your life, from a seed into fruit. This is your direction, the journey from within, where denial of oneself is the only form of sin. From the vastness of the dark, emerge the significance of the light, which represents the deepest love story, as well as the presence of a fight. And this is where duality unites, and your life becomes a whole lot more interesting. Live on.